That's the Claxton Calliope. I'd like to know where that's at. Took the Claxton horns and set them up, and they would put that in the back of a truck, and they had it in parades. And these photographs over here are plants that were from outside of Madison County. All these are gone except the Juarez plant. They've torn them all down. A lot of people in Anderson here went, at one time or another, went down there to work in different ones of these plants when they were setting them up. I've had quite a few of them in here to the exhibit that worked at almost every one of them. Those are some of the batteries that they built at Muncie. Now these photographs here, this is 1908, and this is the first plants they built on Columbus Avenue. You see how the plants are separated there, and they did that because they had a lot of fires in plants at that time. They figured that if they got a fire going there, why it wouldn't burn it all down. But they kept expanding, and they run out of room, so they had to go ahead and just build one big building there. And that is a high school co-op group. I figure in the early 20s sometime. This photograph here is taken in 1912, and the Wolverine Car Club from Detroit, Michigan came down here. They were on a 3-day auto tour. They come down here, and Remy had a dinner for them and had tours of the plants, and then they left Anderson, and they went on down to Indianapolis and went through some of the car plants down there. But Henry Ford and Etzel were in this car group here. I didn't know you'd ever been in Anderson, but the big red ball there's the finial off of the water tower at Plant 1. This is the photograph of it when they started tearing the buildings down over there, and that's the water tower right here, same one.
Looks like a smokestack, not a water
No,
tower.
the water tower's
No, right alongside of it.
Oh,
It's
I
a little
see.
hard to see it. Here's the smokestack. You can see it right here.
Okay. All right.
Ted Vinson got that for us. I guess when they tore the other water tower down over here, they threw the ball off top of it that didn't bounce very good, so we didn't get it. He had them put that one on a rope and lower it down. Some of the magnetos that the Remy brothers built. Now this down here is the Delco Laboratories at Dayton, Ohio, and they were building the similar things that the Ramys were building. General Motors ended up buying them, and they combined them. This is a Remy electric cranking motor, and that's a Remy electric meter, and that coil down there is Remy electric. The Remy electric stuff's generally pretty hard to get. That there is the first electric windshield wiper motor that they made. That was in 1928. Up to that time, they were all vacuum, run on vacuum, and different driving situations. Sometimes your wipers would quit running, or they'd run real fast. Or these are some of the parts, pins and stuff from the UAW 662. Little pins on the red card there are from the Delco Remy Employees Association. And the silver badge down there is the Guide Lamp Loyal 2000. Those were company unions, and they were set up in the 30s as kind of a way around the unions.
I see.
This wall here is just kind of general photographs of people, things they were doing at the factories, and of course everybody had a lunch box and the safety gloves and the safety glasses, and I was kind of surprised at how, going through the old Klan newspapers, at how concerned Remy was with working safety, though. They had safety glasses real early on. Remy had a co-op store also. It was on Columbus Avenue. Well, that's a receipt from it there. Worker was supposed to be able to go in there and buy things at cost. And so they got a large ham there for $2.60. And 5-pound bag of sugar, though, was 45 cents. Sugar must have been awful high at that time. I did find in one of the clans, and I should have wrote it down, they were talking about setting this up, and that's about the time it was. The other photograph is the Twilight League baseball team. And I'd heard stories before, if you were a good baseball player, you had your job out there. And they took that pretty serious. And this thing here is a Delco light plant, and it was made over in Dayton, Ohio. It was a generator that they sold to farmers to generate electricity for their farms. It was made in Dayton. It wasn't made here in Anderson, but General Motors, when they bought the Dayton company, well, they left that over there. But the farmer could run a water pump or lighting, things they needed for in their barn. The fellow that donated this to us, he said his grandfather sold these back in the 30s. And he said what they would do is they'd go out to a farmer and they would sell the farmer one of these units so he could run a water pump, so he could pump water to the barn. And they'd wait about 3 or 4 weeks. They go back to the same farm, but they'd go up and knock on the kitchen door, and the lady of the house would come by and they'd say, well, you know that thing your husband just got, it'll run a refrigerator, it'll run a washing machine, it'll run the things for in your home too. So they'd make another sale for that. These glass batteries here, they could run the generator and charge these batteries up, and then when the generator wasn't running, they still had. That's how General Motors got into the refrigerator business, because it also run a refrigerator. This is all the parts, mainly airplane parts they made out there during World War II. The most important thing I think that they made out there, though, was the aluminum castings for the Allison aircraft engines. That was done over in Plant 7. Plant 7 was built and was producing castings in 71 days. They went from the dirt, having it under roof, and had the castings shipped to Allison. Pretty quick. Well, the auto industry was good at doing model changeovers, and that was a time there it paid off, because they were able to change everything from car production to war production. This piece here is a Roll of Honor that was over at Plant 5, and the 4 names that are on there were fellows that worked in Plant 5 that were killed during the war. Delco Remy had 6,133 employees that served during World War II. And of that 6,133, they had 156 that had been killed by the end of the war. And I just found in one of the Klan papers that 1947 had been up to 172. I don't know whether it was guys that had died from their wounds or or people that were missing, or and they found out that they were dead or what. And these parts over here in this case are mainly aircraft parts. World War II pieces. The horns down here were made for vehicles or air horns that they made during the war. A couple things in there, and we're not real sure what they are, but they are World War II. The gear shift knob, they made gear shift knobs like that in Plant 7, but that's one that was made for a deuce and a half. It's got 5 forward speeds engraved into the top of it. And these things over here are just, well, the posters are for a radio program that they had at Delco and Guide both, and that was a weekly radio program. There's another sign there for a blood drive that they had out there during the war. They had bond drives, they had scrap drives. They even dug up a big area in front of Guide Lamp, and I imagine that Delco probably had some areas too where they had garden plots in there, and people could have their victory gardens. The one fellow there on the stand was the governor of Indiana at the time. Have no idea what happened to the flag that they got presented, but that's disappeared. I got all excited when I found these photographs because I thought it had to do with this here, but it was for this bond drive. That's the most important thing we have in our collection up here. That's the original Army Navy E flag from World War II, and that's the flag that all these people are out on Columbus Avenue to see. There's over 10,000 people showed up that day for the flag presentation. We have a photograph in the other room in there of this front of Plant 10, and it was taken during the war. Building was built during the war. There's no logo or nothing up on the front of the building, no name on it. And I guess there was kind of a squabble went back and forth between Delco Remy and the government, because the government built the building. Delco Remy wanted to put their name on it, and they weren't going to allow them to put the name. After the war was over, then the building was sold to Delco Remy, and they put their name on it then. But we have a photograph in there. There's no name on the front of the building, and that's some of the alternators that they made out there, and the starters. We don't have a generator. That thing there on that shelf's the thing I miss the most from out there, though. The good old Delco Remy paycheck. That was for only a penny, but I imagine if you had one everything like that they ever made, you'd have a pile. This one in the corner here, I spent 20 years building them things, cap and coil assemblies over in 2048. I have nightmares every once in a while. I'm still on that line. I think I could sit down and run them and never miss a one. This up here is a mock-up of the electric battery that went into this electric car here. That's all made out of wood. It's not a real battery. Okay. These lamps, we got 5 or 6 different lamps that they gave those to people when they retired. I hired in over in Plant 7. The first 2.5 weeks I was there, I was in the horn department. If it had been 3 weeks, I was going to quit. I ended up, they sent me down to 708 and they built light switches down there. But the horn department, they would build the horns up, and when they got at the end of the line, they tested them. And you get out of there at night, and that's all you could hear was horns blowing.